about trying to jot everything down and take notes, you'll be able to review this and you'll be able to take notes on your own time. So that's it for me. I'm going to have Dr. Quila Ryder, who's going to be one of our presenters and making a major contribution to this course throughout, go through some of the course objectives and prerequisites, and then after that we'll get into the meat of today's lecture with Dr. Steve's presentation. Dr. Steve Haltiwanger will be giving today's lecture. So let me just get over to the next slide here. All right, Dr. Quila, you want to take it from here?
Sure. Thank you, Lily. Welcome, everyone. This is the third edition of this LifeWave training that has been quite successful, I feel. We've gotten really good feedback, so we want your feedback along the whole process. There will be email addresses that you can send feedback to, and please be honest and forthright with suggestions for improvement and what you liked most. So our objectives in this training is to train practitioners in the use of this manual for a little bit more advanced patching protocols than what we normally send around. A bunch of us have gotten together and tried to pull things from the principles of acupuncture to help you get even more results, and also when you get stuck, what to do if something's not working. So we're going to be hopefully training all of you practitioners so that you can teach others. And we're also wanting to give you confidence so that, you know, once in a while when you don't get results, you'll know what to do. And then also to make sure that you understand the principles of safe patching and to provide you this resource. We also want to train you to refer to symptoms rather than disease. Cannot emphasize this enough because as many of you well know, here in the US anyway, there was a major headline about the FDA has gone after companies that are nutritionally based, that are offering supplements for the use of chelation, and they mentioned that chelation helps with cancer and their ADD and Alzheimer's and so on and so forth. We cannot do that. We don't do that. We only talk about symptoms. Okay? We'll keep emphasizing this the whole time. Here's what we expect of you. We expect that you have used the patches in the past and currently, that you have read the brochures, that you've read the chapters on the manual before the class so that you will have some familiarity with what it is we are approaching through what chapter topics, because most of us do not just repeat the chapter topics on our slide presentations and our presentations verbally. We go beyond that even more. That you have a meridian chart or some source for a meridian chart, a book or something, so that you can refer to it as we go along. And then of course you have to have access to the internet even to be listening to us, and that you have to become familiar with yinyanghouse.com. It is right now our major source of point pictures and other information. We also want you to understand that 80 to 90% of all people that you will be patching respond to these protocols, and you're going to get really good results just from the brochures. And that these patches alleviate symptoms using acupuncture points. In fact, in the case of IceWave, the pain patches, we don't even need to use acupuncture points a lot of times. That you don't need to know acupuncture to learn and use this technology. And that your knowledge of some points and meridians is required to at least take this course. but not maybe for the people that you're patching or that you're teaching it to. We try to make it simple and try and stay away from advanced acupuncture Chinese vernacular. We also want you to understand these patches don't make the body do anything. They only provide a tool or a message to help achieve homeostasis and balance.
All right, thank you for that great introduction, Dr. Quila. With that, I'm going to pass the controls over to Dr. Stephen Haltiwanger, our Health and Science Director, who will be getting into today's lectures. So, Dr. Steve, if you bear with me, I'm going to make you a presenter. All right, Dr. Stephen, if you show your screen, you can launch into the lecture here.
Did my screen come up?
You're on.
All right, let's see here. All right, today's training is going to be about some of the biological processes that take place in the body from an electronic perspective. A lot of this material, or most of it, is not in the manual. It is an extra credit, as they say, in order to give people information about how the patches work. We don't usually release this information to most people, so I'm not going to read the manual to you, and you may want to take some notes or just basically review the videos another time. Now, in the manual, there's information on the anatomy of the cell. If you wish to, let me turn this off here. Anyway, if you wish to get more information about the cell structures, there's a website called www.axopub.com. It's the website right here on the screen, and there's a section where it downloads. You can download a whole book on cellular biology if you're so interested in that. But this is not necessary information beyond just a brief overview of what you could get in any biology textbook from high school. So basically, I'm going to cover a little bit of this in the material, but for people that want more background, there it is. Now, to start off with, the body is composed of materials that are called liquid crystals. Most people are familiar with the concept of liquid crystals because they are present in their computer screens and their TVs. So there's a lot of information out there in the electronic field about the properties of liquid crystals. But what most people do not recognize is that liquid crystals the body is also composed of liquid crystals, the proteins, the DNA, the RNA. Water is a liquid crystal. And liquid crystals have the ability to organize and store coherent patterns when exposed to electrical field. Now, as we go through this lecture today, we're going to be talking about bioelectronic circuits, which are the electrical flows of energy that take place in the body. Meridians are one source or one avenue for these circuits to flow in. The nervous system is another area. But what I want you to recognize is that every cell of the body has electronic properties. And every cell in the body that's placed in a organ or tissue is a part of an organized construct. And one of the organizational properties of this are the electromagnetic fields of the body. So I don't think it's an accident at all that the body is composed of liquid crystals. It is critically important to how the body functions as an electromagnetic being. What happened here? Let me see. Okay, so we're looking at liquid crystals, and we see that energy waves will help organize these properties. And so we're looking at the ability to form patterns when proper waves of energy, electromagnetic energy, is in place. Here's a little bit of a review of what we just said, that the DNA, the proteins, cholesterol, as well as the lipids that make up the cell membranes. Now, cells are made up of, cell membranes are basically what they call polyunsaturated fatty acids. These are fatty acids with many double bonds. They're very different than the types of fats that are present in most industrial foods. As a matter of fact, industrial foods disrupt the integrity of the cell membranes. This is why a lot of people have gone away from processed foods, because of the damaging effects on their body when they put these types of fats into their system. And I'm not going to give a lecture on trans fatty acids and partially hydrogenated vegetable oils, but these are very dangerous compounds. In addition, the cell membrane lipids are very sensitive to free radicals, which means that they're easily attacked by oxidizing molecules, which is one reason why antioxidants are critically important in controlling damage in the body. So another aspect is the liquid crystals of the body are basically hydrated. That means they are surrounded by layers of water. Now, the best way to think about this would be, say, like a package of clear wrap that you buy at the grocery store in order to preserve your food. You take a section of the clear wrap, you wrap your foods in it, or you cover your dishes. And if you look at the tube, there's a cardboard structure in the center, and there's layer after layer after layer of clear wrap. That's how water molecules, when they're properly organized, look when they're all around the materials of the body. So this is what is called organized water. And it has very specific properties, and this is why people are using lots of types of water treatment systems, where they're using a lot of types of water that have concentrates that improve organization of water, because when you do this, you are actually improving the electronic nature of your body. And so basically I want you to just look at the fact that water molecules are not just randomly distributed around materials in the body. This is called free water, but then there's organized layers of water around the structures of the body. So we see that the crystals will align the electromagnetic fields and they'll array in coherent patterns. This is important when you begin to think about, if I'm putting an energy field into the body, am I putting one that matches the body's natural ability to receive? This may be too vague for you, and I'll get a little bit more clear in a few minutes. But the patches, in a sense, are transmitters. They're transmitting coherent waves of energy into the body, and they are assisting the body in reorganizing itself into coherent patterns. Now, liquid crystals have special properties. They're what are called acoustical and electrical transducers. This is a transducer is something that can change one type of energy into another, say a mechanical vibration into an electronic signal, for example. And so we find that they can convert a mechanical or acoustical vibration into electronic oscillations. This is why people have used things like music for tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years as a healing tool. This is why acupuncture works to some degree, because you're using a mechanical signal. You're stimulating the connective tissue with mechanical irritation, and you're creating a flow of electricity in the tissue. So that's one aspect of acupuncture. Now, you can also do it with patches by sending in an electromagnetic wave right into the tissues. And what I'm trying to tell you is that the body is designed to receive electrical signals, electromagnetic signals. That's basically summarizing in one sentence all the slides I've given you before, is that the body is designed to receive electromagnetic information. And so when we look at the materials that the body is made up of, we find they're oscillators. They actually send out information to other components. And when we look at the DNA and RNA, the newest research from the biophysical field is that they are sending out photons of energy. That the DNA is actually like a laser. It's sending out pulses of electromagnetic energy in the form of light, and this is used as a regulatory control mechanism. This is action at a distance, as they say. And so what we're looking at is the body is a wireless transmitter to some degree. It has at the cellular level, at the microscopic level, the body is using wireless transmission as a control mechanism for the function of the tissues. So we find that these components that the body is manufactured out of are antennas. Now, if they're an antenna, that means they're designed to receive or transmit information from one place to another. And a resonator is a method or a component that's able to vibrate and send out specific signals. Now, we look at the electrical properties of membranes, proteins, and DNA. We find that they possess electronic characteristics. They also act as electrical conductors and biological resonators, so they're capable of both sending and receiving electromagnetic energy. This is why the patches work. The patches are not sending electrical currents into the body directly, in a sense. What they're sending is electromagnetic energy, and it's being transduced at a cellular level into an electrical signal. And so it's a wave of energy in primarily the infrared bandwidth, and we'll try to cover that a little bit more. But what I'm trying to say is basically we're composed of wireless transmitters. Now, there's an energy field that creates and permeates the matrix of the body. This is called an organizing field. And in this example, it should be that the field that's above the head goes down below the feet the same way. So it's an incomplete design here. But this gives you the point of view. In the center of this is a field, a little concentrated field. That's the heart. Heart sends out a very strong electromagnetic field. It's 50 times stronger than other cellular components. So it's very powerful. The brain also sends out electromagnetic signals that are able to be read at a distance. There is now technology available, at least in military applications, where they can actually use a receiver and pick up the transmissions coming off the brain, and even further, they can actually have you concentrate on certain concepts, and they can actually decode the language. It's that fast. It is that complicated now with the technology. So basically, they can actually know what you think, in a sense. This technology is well developed, and it is in military applications. But the point I'm making is that your body is a transmitter. Your brain is a transmitter. Your heart is a transmitter. When somebody says, our heart goes out to you, literally at a biological level, they're saying, my field of energy has expanded from my heart field into you. And there's a double, or I'm sorry, a bilateral communication that takes place. When somebody is in love, their heart fields expand, and each person is receiving and transmitting information at a level below consciousness, and this is resonance. And what I'm trying to say is you can actually touch someone at a distance with this when you open up your heart field. And so what's important is when you go a step further, recognize that the standing energy fields regulate, control the chemical and neural communication systems of the body. If you want more information on this, you can go to the book The Body Electric by Robert O. Becker, B-E-C-K-E-R. Robert O. Becker, The Body Electric. It's been written about 1985, and he discusses in there how the electrical properties of the body control the chemistry of the body. And this information is well advanced now. There's a newer book called Life Force. It was written in 2009, and it's by Claude Swanson. It's called Life Force, The Scientific Basis by Claude Swanson. And this is a book written by a physicist that describes in detail, in this very large book, and it's about $25 US, the information that's been collected in the biophysics area of how the body works electronically. It's a good book for anybody's library that wants more information in this area. But when you're looking at pattern formation, you're looking at how things organize in a system. You're looking at how some random molecular reactions are not random at all, but they're more of an organized chemical processes. I'm going too far off in this area, so I'm going to back up here. Now, if we look at the cell membrane, we look at that it's a double bilayer. It's a bilayer of 2 layers of fatty molecules, and it's sandwiched by minerals that are in solution on both sides of it. So basically you have calcium and sodium on the outside of the cell in solution, and on the inside of the cell you have high concentrations of potassium and magnesium. Now, the membrane is what's called a selective permeable barrier, which means that minerals will flow back and forth from the outside to the inside. So whenever you have an electrical impulse, the cell membrane depolarizes, and calcium and sodium flow into the inside. And then when it repolarizes, the body pumps calcium and sodium out and pumps potassium back in. Now, you don't need to memorize any of this, but what you're looking at is that it forms a barrier which maintains a concentration of different minerals between the inside and the outside. Now, this gradient creates an electrical potential. So what we have is our capacitors. It's a broad way of looking at a storage device for electrical energy, because you're creating electrical potential across this membrane, and so every cell has the ability to store electrical charge. So it's part of the electronic function of the body is that the cell membranes store electrical charges, so they're power distribution centers. Now, what's important is that we have found back in 2005 that the energy patches increase the cell membrane potential. That means that the energy patches, one of the effects of the energy patches is to increase the cell's ability to hold electrical charge. Why is this important? Because the powering up of the cell membranes helps the cell work, helps the cell perform the functions. It's just like if you had a battery and a fully charged battery, you can operate electronic equipment from flashlights to tape recorders to cameras, whereas a dead battery, the flashlights won't work, the cameras won't work, the tape recorders won't work. So they have to be fully charged. So your cell phone has a battery and it's fully charged, your cell phone works. When it's exhausted, the cell phone is not operating. Well, the same thing happens with the body. The cells of the body are electronic in nature. They require a power source, and the power comes from the mitochondria of the body burning fuel, sugars, amino acids, and fats, and they release electrons. Now, these electrons just don't randomly go out into the cell. They are actually stored in the cell membrane. So part of what the cell membrane function is a storage device for the energy produced by the cell. This allows the cell to plug in components in order to operate. So I think it's important to recognize that the energy patches, at least that's what we've studied so far, will increase the cell membrane's ability to store charge. So when we look at the fact that different concentrations of minerals are on each side of the cell, we create a strong electrical field. It's an available, this field is now an available source of energy for cellular activities, including the transport of nutrients into the cell and the transport of toxins out of the cell. Why is this important? This is why you see people, when you put on energy patches, for say, they start getting a detox reaction. This is when we first became aware of detox, late 2004, early 2005, is that we put energy patches on some people and they would notice a metallic taste in their mouth. And their urine would turn colors or smell differently. And what was happening is they were now activating the cell membrane's charge, or strengthening the charge of the cell membrane, the battery power of the cells, and now the cells were transporting toxins out of the cells into the bloodstream, which then went into the urine and the bowels. Now, glutathione also has a detox reaction, but it works differently than, say, the energy patches. Ice wave will have some degree of a detox reaction, but this is the mechanism why energy patches and ice wave, to some degree, have detoxification effects, is because they're actually strengthening the battery effect of the cells so that the cells can pump toxins out. In another aspect, the cell battery effect also pumps nutrients in. This is why if you combine a good nutritional program with your patches, you'll actually increase the ability to transport nutrients into the cell because you're influencing the battery functions of the cell. So that's where I wanted to go with this, is explain that there is a battery function of the cells. Now, healthy cells have a membrane potential of -60 to 100 millivolts. And the negative sign indicates that the inside of the cell membrane is relatively more negative than the outside. Now, when one considers the membrane potential in a surface area of the cell, the electrical field, you find that you're looking at 10 million to 20 million volts per meter. That is a lot of power. You can literally electrocute someone if you were able to transfer all that energy at one time. So a healthy body has the ability to generate a massive electrical field, but it's spread out in so many small areas, you don't get electrocuted yourself. Now, any change in cell membrane capacitance, or the ability to store charge, increasing or decreasing, will alter the cellular nutrient and mineral entry into the cell and will facilitate the release of toxins from the cell. And so this is important when you look at the fact that certain chemicals in the body, let's say you're exposed to pesticides of certain types, and these pesticides will actually damage the cell components, particularly the energy production component of the cell. So they are called mitochondrial disruptors. What does this mean? It means the mitochondria of the cell, the power plants of the cell, there to be up to 1,000 per cell, are no longer functioning optimally. They're weakened. And so now you don't have as much electrical energy produced at a cellular level. So the cell membrane battery becomes weaker. So it's powered down. Now all of a sudden, because you've damaged your electrical battery function of the cells, you start being unable to transport out toxins. And so over time, your cells get more and more impregnated with toxins, and you go into degenerative diseases. And there's quite a bit of information in the literature about homotoxicology is one of the terms for this, homotoxicology. And so what I'm looking at is use of patches on a regular basis will help your body release stored toxins. And one of the reasons for this is that you're improving the battery functions of the tissue. Now, we know that laboratory studies have identified the cell membranes as a primary site of interaction with electromagnetic fields, environmental fields. And so what we see is that the membrane structures, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, couple electromagnetic fields to internal mechanisms, which are called enzymatic cascades. And what does this mean? It means that the cells have antennas that are designed to receive certain wavelengths or frequencies of electromagnetic energy that help the cells operate in the proper function. And at the same time, you can disrupt the cell membrane, such as an exposure to a 60-cycle electromagnetic field from electronic equipment. This is why people get very tired when they're exposed to their computer screens for too long, or they're exposed to high-intensity electromagnetic fields as they stand near a microwave too long. Some people are more sensitive to this than others. These are called electrosensitive individuals. And our environments are now impregnated with this energy fields, millions of times stronger than existed 100 years ago. So our cells have some degree of ability to ignore the static information, but it certainly is a disruptive influence on the body's natural functioning. And so we'll try to go over that a little bit. So what we look at is, if you look at this slide, you see that these little materials sticking out of the surface of the cell, these are called glycoproteins, or protein sugars, sugar proteins. And they have these side chains on them. These little orange things are these sugar molecules that are attached to the cell. And there's about 8 basic sugars that are involved in cellular communication. There's probably more, but those are the ones I remember. And what happens is these sugar molecules attached to these proteins, these are called receptors. Now, in the medical literature and pharmacology literature, these are called chemical receivers, chemical receptors. So let's say you have a hormone such as thyroid being released by the thyroid gland, it will circulate through the body until it touches a cell and it binds to a thyroid receptor. Same thing if you're in the brain and you have a neurotransmitter like serotonin released or dopamine released. So these neurotransmitters get released and they bond to a chemical receptor. However, if you look at it from the point of view of a physicist, these are not only chemical receptors, they are electromagnetic antennas. And each receptor is going to respond to a different wavelength of electromagnetic energy. And so what happens is you are able to activate a process of chemistry by a wireless transmission of electromagnetic energy if it's very specific, of a certain wavelength. It's like a radio. So basically, here's a radio station on the outside transmitting, and it's picked up by those radio receivers that are tuned to that particular channel. Now, these cell protein membrane complexes act as signal detectors, antennas, signal amplifiers. Now, what does that mean? It means that there's a complex of protein structures that have electronic properties, and they can amplify a signal. So a single photon of the white wavelength can activate a cell receptor, and it can be amplified 1 billion times. So you don't need a strong signal in order to activate the chemistry of the body. You need an extremely specific signal. So this is another way of looking at these antennas, and if you ever look up, get a chance sometimes to look up microwave antennas, you'll see they have certain geometries to them, and these receptors are not tuned to the microwave range. They're smaller. They're tuned to a higher frequency energy, and that's in the infrared range. So here's an example of the materials of the body, the cell membrane, complexing into other structures. So you have a, can y'all see my arrow?
I can see it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at these structures, you see they have these coil shapes. Well, if you look at electronic equipment, you're going to find a lot of coils present in this. So these are inductor coils, in a sense, and they are able to receive an electromagnetic signal, say from here, this antenna, and it's amplified. There's a complex of structures here, these cooperative structures, that act to amplify the signal that's received. And why is this important? It's important because the DNA actually sends wireless transmission to other cells, to components inside the cell that are designed to receive these signals. It's important because external signals or messages can be sent. So we already recognize through anybody that studied medicine or pharmacology that chemical signals can activate these. We also know from the research in acupuncture that mechanical needling can actually activate these receptors. We also know that the tissues of the body have what are called piezoelectric, which means that if they're stretched, they'll actually send out a signal. So muscle tissue, bone, is piezoelectric. Why is this important? This is why movement makes you feel better. Dance, for an example, is going to create tension on the ligaments, the muscles, the bones, and create signals. This is why people, when they go dancing, they feel better. You can also activate these with thermal. They're called, the moxibustion is a thermal mechanism of activating it, or heat pads, non-electric, of course, are another way of activating, because the tissues of the body are what are called pyroelectric. That means that heat will generate an electrical signal. They get also activated by acoustical, and so they actually have transducers or microphone-like effects. So a sound wave, or the proper form, can actually generate an electrical signal. Light lasers, a photonic device such as a laser or a phototherapy equipment of the right wavelengths of energy, can activate and create an electrical signal. What I'm trying to tell you is, no matter how you get there, you have different mechanisms involved, but they're all going to the same place. They're generating an electrical signal that's carried through the cell membrane into the internal part of the cell. And also these signals are carried between cells. And so we see that patches are another method of activating the electronic properties of the body. So we see from a point of view of a modern electrical device, they're composed of transistors, and transistors are composed of semiconductors, resistors, and capacitors. We've already mentioned that the cell membrane is a capacitor. I'm going to now point out that the cell membrane proteins, as well as the connective tissue in your skin, and the muscle tissues, are semiconductors, and they certainly have components that act as resistors. So what you see is the body has all the components that make up transistors, and transistors make up all the modern electronic devices that we use, from radios to computers. And so when you look at it from this point of view, you see that the body has all the capability of a communication device and a computing device. And this is important when you understand that you can influence the electrical properties of the body in a very positive way by applying LifeWave patches. So we see at this point the cells can receive and detect light, electrons, mechanical vibrations. They have to be in what's called a certain window of frequency and amplitude, or wavelength and amplitude. They can't be too strong or the body will ignore them. They can't be the wrong frequency or wavelength or the body will ignore them. So all soft tissues, including collagen, elastin, keratin, these are materials that make up your skin, have regular repeating substructures. They are semiconductors. And we'll see that these semiconductors are embedded in a matrix of organized water. Now this makes them wet semiconductors. And from the point of view of electronic transmission, the better hydrated the tissues are, the better they are to conduct electrical signals from one place to another. The more dehydrated they are, the more they become resistors. So what happens is this helps you understand why hydration is critically important in the proper functioning of the patches, because you're trying to keep the electrical conduction of signal optimized in the tissues. Now, going even further, we find out that the body is a hologram, a liquid crystal polymer continuum. And what do I mean by hologram? A hologram is a structure or an image where each component carries all the information of the whole image. It's like a fractal. And if you get a fractal and you look at it at a magnified point of view, you keep going down, you get the same repeating structure over and over again. Well, the body is holographic. And if you look at it, every cell that has a nucleus has all the genetic material needed to manufacture the entire body. You can manufacture the body out of a skin cell. The cells that don't have a nucleus are the red blood cells, which have lost their nucleuses as they mature. But the point is, you can take any cell of the body, theoretically, and make an entire human being out of any individual cell, no matter where it's located. And so we see that the body is a hologram, and it's wired together through protein structures that pass into the cells to what's called the cytoskeletal element. These are examples here are the internal components of the wiring, and this wiring passes outside of the cell and connects to other tissues. And these tissues have the ability to be semiconducting or electrically conducting and photonic or fiber optic. So now we go to another stage and we see that the materials that make up the body's communication system hardwired are fiber optic as well as electronic. So it's like a coaxial cable that connects your house to the phone system or a cable system. You wind up having the ability to send electronic signals through the wiring component and fiber optic signals through the fiber optic component. So the body has the ability to fiber optically connect from one place to another. Well, why is this important? Because this means there's a very rapid transmission. There's a slower transmission through the electronic semiconducting proteins, but there's a more rapid transmission through the light conducting proteins. And these are examples of the internal architecture of a cell, and you can see over here on this slide here that it's significant wiring that takes place, and this is not randomly wired together. These connections are important. Okay, let me go over here a second. Okay, so these wiring. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Let's see. Okay. Oh, it won't cover it yet. Highlighter. Let's try this one. Okay, there you go. Now, here we have an example of a cell membrane, and there's wiring that passes through the cell membrane to the internal wiring of the cell. And this internal wiring connects up the different organelles of the cell, such as the mitochondria and the DNA. And there's a transmission that takes place. There's an internal current that comes in, and there's an external current that goes out. And this means the cell is in constant communication with every other cell in the body through these electrical as well as fiber optic components that make up its communication system. Besides the hardwired communication system, you also have wireless transmission that takes place from structures such as the DNA, which sends out wireless signals to different components to operate the machinery. So here we have the DNA, in a sense, being wired in to the cell. Here's a mitochondria right here being wired into the cell. So what happens is the mitochondria generate electrons which pass to the cell membrane where they're stored as charge. So here we have, with proper functioning, when your energy production of your cells are properly functioning, your cell membranes become recharged. And this charge or battery effect of the cell membrane will control or power up some of the some of the processes that take place in the body, such as protein synthesis, which is one of the most important, or transport of nutrients in, or transport of toxins out. So what we see is that the cells of the body are involved in maintaining both an inward and an outward current between the interior of the cell and the extracellular matrix. Another reason why this is important is that if you activate an acupuncture point with the patches, these signals then will be transmitted along the meridian system deeper into the tissues down to even the cellular level. That's what I'm trying to say, is there's a continuum of an information flow from the surface down even to the cellular level. And so these things are important in understanding why the patches can have such very strong biological influences on the body. Now we looked at this inward flow, we look at this outward flow. We see that these allow for electronic as well as fiber optic communication. And I was writing about this back in 1998. Now, control of movement of electrical charge in the cells is a critical factor involved in wound healing. And this is what you see when you put the ice wave patches on. You're influencing the transport of electrical charges in the tissue, and you are facilitating wound healing when you apply ice wave patches to the body. And this is why people have noticed that bruises heal faster and injuries heal faster. There's new data now showing cartilage regeneration can take place. You can use ice wave patches on either side of the knee, and over a period of some months, you can actually regenerate cartilage in knees if you continually patching the knees with ice wave patches. We've also got other data showing if you're using the new X15 and say a glutathione patch together, you can influence cartilage regeneration in the knees. So repair is critically important, and it's through this process of movement of charge that we're seeing this. The mitochondria have what's called an electron transport chain. So as materials get burned up or oxidized in the mitochondria, electrons are released. DNA, one of the functions of DNA is to control protein synthesis. And this is involved in proper charge. This is why tissues heal faster, why you feel better when you're using the patches on a regular basis, because you're influencing not only protein synthesis, but you're also influencing hormone synthesis. And so we see that the tissues that are involved in skin repair, bone repair, muscle repair, are all involved by having a high level of electrical charge or cell membrane potential. And this is why, one reason why you see skin regeneration occurring with our patches, with people with, say, their wrinkles are reducing or their skin is becoming healthier. Now, the connective tissue is made up of long chains of proteins as well as sugar molecules. I don't want to go too far into this, but anyway, the mixtures of these proteins and sugar molecules form biopolymers, and they're electronically interactive. This may be too detailed here. One of the important tissues involved in this connective tissue, one of the important molecular structures involved in connective tissue and bone is called hyaluronic acid. And this material has the ability to conduct electrical charges. And it can be in a fern shape or a coil shape. Now, inflamed tissues have reduced production of hyaluronic acid, and this reduces healing. So when you're patching the knee, for example, you're increasing the electrical conductivity of that tissue. You're reestablishing the natural electronic structures at a molecular level, and you're going to facilitate healing. We've already talked about movement of charged ions through the cell membrane, sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, and they go back and forth, and the concentration of sodium and calcium is highest on the outside of the cell, and the concentration of potassium, magnesium is highest on the inside of the cell. And that is necessary for proper cell electronic function to take place. So what happens, the cell has these specialized channels called ion channels to allow these minerals to pass back and forth. Now, if you look at it, here's an ion channel here, and I tried to create this little spiral. That's because there's a vortex field. You're looking at a vortex of let's say this here's a calcium, and it's spiraling down into the interior, and then it's being pumped back through another channel out the other way later. Let's just say this is a channel that's coming out this way. Now, why is this important? Because you begin to understand that these spiraling vortexes are fractal in a sense and are scaled. And you'll see the same phenomenon take place at all levels of the universe. If we look at a spiral galaxy, we see that there's a spiraling vortex of energy field. If we look down at the cellular molecular level, you see there's a spiraling vortex of energy field. If you look at a hurricane, you're looking at a spiraling vortexing energy field. And so facilitation of the natural vortexing action of the tissues is going to lead toward health. And one of the things that I'll probably will try to cover today is that the patches work through a spiraling vortex. I don't know if that made sense or not. I'm trying. It's hard. Sometimes this lecture can take me 8 to 16 hours, depending on how much detail I put into it. And I've given it around the world since 1998. It usually takes 8 hours. I'm giving you components of an 8-hour seminar, and so sometimes it might be somewhat disjointed. All right, so let's continue. We see the cell membranes have electrical properties. That's important. We see the cell membranes are liquid crystal resonators that have components that are able to allow them to act as transmitters and receivers of specific frequency signals. This permits energy signals to initiate biological effects. And we look at that the cell membrane proteins of DNA are not only liquid crystals, but they're natural semiconductors. We see that the body is designed to be an electromagnetically sensitive organism. We also see that proteins are bioelectronic switches. They have on and off states. And that means that proteins are semiconductors able to conduct and route electrical currents in preferential directions. So we see that a signal that comes in, say, and activates this protein here will allow a preferential direction of an electronic signal to take place. Now, direct current is electrical current that flows steadily in one direction, and we see that there are direct currents that flow in the body in the connective tissues. And bioelectric currents are controlled by changing electrical conduction of proteins. Applying patches changes electrical conduction. We've now had an extensive amount of research looking at with electrodes and machines put on the body where we measure, say, different acupuncture points, and then we put patches on. We see that the electrical conductivity of the tissues will increase when patches are applied. What does this mean? It means we're engaging the natural electronic properties of the tissues, and we're increasing the natural flow of electrical energy in the tissues. So biostimulation, when we see an unhealthy tissue, we find an area of the body where the natural flow of electrical currents is impaired. So let's say you drop a brick on your foot, your left foot, and that left foot, top of the foot swells and becomes inflamed and becomes very painful, and it's bruised. If we were to apply electrodiagnostic equipment to that foot, we would see that the natural flow of electronic energy into that tissue has been impaired. So what we see is it becomes, some of the tissue becomes electrically, instead of semiconductive, it becomes more electrically resistant. And so we see that the tissues are less conductive. Now there are other situations where it can be more conductive, but it's out of balance. And so what happens is, as the tissue becomes less electrically conductive, you slow down the healing process. Now this is why devices such as laser therapy, this is why devices such as microcurrent stimulation will work in improving the speed of repair of that tissue, because you're reestablishing normal electrical conductivity. Now, you can also do this with patches. As a matter of fact, I think patches are more effective in this way than others. So when you apply ice wave patches and you get an immediate pain response, you are renormalizing the abnormal electrical conductivity that's occurred in that tissue. And you are going to facilitate the healing response. Now, acupuncture points, in a sense, are entry points or doorways into the body's electrical system. Acupuncture points are skin areas with high electrical conductivity. So an acupuncture point, it can be distinguished from surrounding tissue. Yes? Oh, okay. Sounds like somebody wanted to say something.
Dr. Steve?
Yes?
Actually, let me break in here real quick. It's about 11 o'clock now. Do we want to take a break after this slide?
Yes, we'll take a break. How long are we going to take a break for?
How about 10 minutes?
How about less?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, give everybody 5 minutes after this slide.
All right.
Okay. So acupuncture points are areas of the skin with higher electrical conductivity, and they overlie connective tissue semiconducting liquid crystal proteins. So these liquid crystal proteins have properties of being semiconductive, piezoelectric, and powerelectric. That means they respond to electrical signals, pressure signals, and heat signals, all generating electrical currents. So we're going to take a 5-minute break and come back here again. Okay? So starting now.
Dr. Steve, maybe before we get going, we can remind people that they will get a link to these webinars, that they can go up and review the webinar at any point in the future that they want to. I see there was a question about asking for the previous slide to be left up during the break, as if somebody wanted to jot down notes or something. So
I'll put it back up.
Well, and remember, everyone, that you will be able to see this slide and any other part of this lecture and any of the future ones. You're going to get a link, and it's special just for those who are attending the trainings.
Well, you can announce it. Or did you just do that?
I just did.
I think it's about time to get started, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. This was a previous slide. Continuing. Now, one way of looking at the acupuncture meridians are to look at them as electrical circuits. And one thing we know from acupuncture theory is that energy will flow from one meridian to the other and then continue through the whole cycle, then back again. So there's a continual circulation of energy through the meridian systems, like a river system that's continually flowing. Acupuncture points, as I've mentioned, possess greater electrical conduction or conductance than nearby tissues. And that disrupting the energy conduits, or the meridians, disorganizes an integrated electrical control system of the body. We look at the bioelectrical properties of tissues such as nerve cells, and a nerve cell is simply a specialized cell that possesses, all cells have the capability of nerve cells as far as conducting electrical signals. Nerve cells have just taken this property and accentuated or magnified it, or by specializing to be more electrically conductive than other tissues, other cells. So if we look at a nerve cell conduction, say right here where the electrical signal is being conducted here outward, we see as you have an electrical field being conducted, you're going to have a magnetic field at 90-degree angles. So it's called an electromagnetic conduction. So you're going to have electromagnetic fields. So electromagnetic fields blockages can disrupt the balance of energy flows and the functioning of the whole system. You can also, disrupt the electromagnetic field of, say, a nerve cell like this by damaging the conductive pathways, or by interference with the field. This is why some people are electrically sensitive, because the external electromagnetic fields are coming in and disrupting the magnetic component, and thus disrupting the electrical component of the system. And so this is go ahead. I'm sorry, I saw somebody say something. So anyway, any time you can correct blockages in energy flow, this is going to be beneficial. Now, one of the things that the energy patches and the ice wave patches do is that they increase conduction across between the patches. Now, stimulation of acupuncture points can be done through pressure. Somebody's moving around there. You need to mute yourself. You can do it through needling, magnetic fields, electrical fields, photon energy. All of them work through a similar process, and they change the charge of cell membranes and the conductivity of the semiconductive material in the connective tissue, in the muscles, in the cells. So what happens is, no matter what modality you're looking at it, whether it's a pulse electromagnetic field, whether it's a microcurrent with pads, whether it's a laser, whether it's acupressure or reflexology. Somebody needs to mute themselves as moving around. Okay, thank you. So what you have is all of these work through the same mechanisms, which is changing the charge of the cell membranes, changing the conduction through cell membranes, changing the cell membrane capacitance, or normalization of tissue electrical currents. This normalization of electrical currents in the tissue reestablishes normal functioning of the tissues and organs. This is an anatomy. This is a theoretical explanation of how a meridian works. Some people think it's tightly coiled hyaluronic acid molecules that are bound to water and ions. Other people think it's just chains of charged water molecules. The bottom line is the meridians are electrically conductive, and those are highly conductive pathways. This is Yin Lo's work, where you find this is I think it's a scanning electron microscope. Basically, they took pictures, or atomic force microscope. They took pictures of what looked like chains of charged water molecules. Now, it's my opinion there's a very thin thread of material in the center of this, and these water molecules organize around this thread of material. And so there's a lot of research started in Korea on what's called Bongham. I don't know if I can spell that right. B-O-N-H-A-N-G or H-A-M. I'll have to look it up. Anyway, these are these are research has shown that the acupuncture meridian is actually a connective tissue that of the very thin threads that pass from one organ to another. Now, biological electrical currents will flow in semiconducting proteins through all parts of the body and into the interior cells. The electrical currents will flow above and through the cell membranes. Life-weight patches stimulate acupuncture points, changing the potential of cell membranes and creating a flow of electrical currents in the meridians, just as needles do. And in my opinion, they're more effective than needles. So patching is a certainly more advanced form of acupuncture than acupuncture needles, which have been around for many years. Now, a metallic needle can influence the tissue two ways. One is it can work through mechanical stimulation of the piezoelectric fibers and generate an electrical signal. It can also act as an antenna of pulling charged electrons from the atmosphere into the tissue. So there's two different ways that it's thought that the antennas, that the needles increase the flow of electrical currents. I put this in to help you understand that at the basic molecular level, the body is electric. Electric is an electronic machine. This is an enzyme that's located in the mitochondrial inner membrane. And it is actually a pump that uses charges of hydrogen. This is a positive electrical energy, and this is like water. These charges flow through the pump, turns the machinery, the pump. It's like a windmill or a water mill, and it's through this process that you generate ATP. So we find at the basic molecular level that the body is an electrical motor, or has electrical motors put in there. This is an example of this pumping system, and these are what's called the electron transport chains, and they are passing charge from one component to the other, and it's through this that this pump turns and generates energy in the form of ATP. Now, pyruvate kinase is an enzyme that's involved in energy production. And this is an example of an enzyme that requires both magnesium and potassium for activation. Why did I put this slide in there? Because this is the entry point enzyme for the oxidation of carbohydrates and some amino acids. So if you're burning sugar or you're burning protein, you're going to go through this enzyme. And it requires magnesium. So what I'm trying to point out is one of the basic enzymes involved in electrically or in moving energy through the body or creating energy in the body requires magnesium. This is why some people don't respond to the patches because they're magnesium deficient. So they can't make energy because magnesium is required by one of the basic enzymes involved in energy production. So you say, well, this person didn't respond to energy patches. I don't understand why. Well, one of the reasons could be they were dehydrated. Another reason could be that they were minerally deficient. So mineral deficiency is going to impair your energy production. A third reason could be that they're low thyroid. So these are three of the main reasons why we see failures in the energy patches to make people have more energy. So this is just an example of the sugars, glucose, fructose, glycerol, lactate, going through this enzyme into the mitochondrial transcarbonic acid cycle or Krebs cycle. Don't worry about memorizing this. Just remember that energy production requires magnesium. That's what I'm really trying to tell you. And so if you have a person that's not responding to the energy patches, consider they're dehydrated, they're minerally deficient with magnesium particularly, but other minerals are also important, or that they're low in thyroid. Now, this is an interesting slide in that this is a sperm, and as the sperm bonds to the ovum, the tail falls off right here. And then only the nucleus with the DNA present goes into the ovum to form the zygote. Now, if you look at this is the mitochondria of the sperm tail. It's an electromagnet. So we see at a basic cellular level that our body has electronic properties. And here, sperm operate by using an electromagnet to create energy. And this is an example of an electromagnetic. So sperm mitochondria are biological electromagnets. Another example of this. Now, neurotransmission is the process where chemicals or neurotransmitters are released from one cell, and this is an example of the end of a cell, of a neuron cell, and these little packages here are packages or vesicles containing the neurotransmitters that have been manufactured up in the cell body and then transported down to storage sites here. And when electrical signal comes in, electrochemical transmission takes place. So an electrical signal comes in, it causes these cell vesicles to bond to the cell membrane to dump out transmitters, which then bond to the receptors and the second cell, and so you have a process called electrochemical transmission. So the reason I put this up is most doctors are only operating with trying to use drugs to affect right here the neurotransmitter levels without recognizing that you also have to look at the cell membrane which is involved, and that has to do with the lipids or fats that you take in your body. So in order for normal nerve function to occur, you've got to have the proper fats in your diet. Those means omega-3s. Fish oil, for example, are a good source of omega-3s. You also have to have the proper proteins in your diet because these neurotransmitters are made out of proteins, amino acids. And so all of these things have to come together for it to work properly. And we know that different problems that take place or people are exposed to such as alcohol, drugs, or excessive free radicals, will damage these cell components and interfere with transmission. So another thing that you have to consider is, does the person you're working with have the proper dietary antioxidants in the body? Vitamin C, vitamin E, nutrients from vegetables and fruits. Do they have the proper amount of minerals in their body, particularly magnesium, calcium, and zinc? Do they have the right vitamins in their body? So all of these are going to influence how the patches work and or do not work, and how people say, well, I don't get any response from these patches. Whereas simple things such as, do they take a good vitamin mineral formula? Are they eating the right fats? Are they drinking enough fluids? Is their thyroid normalized? Can take a person who's not responding to a complete responder. This is a blow-up of that example. If you look at the body as a total environment, you get into what is called polychromatic theory. And polychromatic theory is that a healthy system will generate all frequencies in a certain range, so, or all wavelengths in a certain range. So if you take, some of the original work was done with forests. They were looking at the auditory range, and they would take microphones out to the forests, and they would find when a forest was healthy, when they looked at it on the computer, that all the wavelengths of energy or signals, frequencies in sound were present. And when a forest was unhealthy, there'd be holes in the spectral signature. And as the forest healed, those frequency holes would improve. What am I trying to say here? When you look at the body with a spectral analyzer, and one of which is, one way of looking at it indirectly is called a gas discharge visualization, GDV devices. GDV, gas discharge visualization. It's like a Carillion photography. You'll find that a healthy person has an energy field that's symmetrical, that all the frequencies are present, there's no holes. But an unhealthy person has frequency holes, in that some frequencies are emitted in excess and some frequencies are deficient. Why is this important? Because we have learned with use of our research that our patches will cause the body to fill in the frequency holes. So in a sense, a person who's unhealthy will have a hole here in their electromagnetic field, and as you use the patches, the field repairs itself in a sense. And so this is overall body integration. This is why the patches have an anti-aging aspect to it from an electronic point of view, in that you're repairing the electrical properties of the organism, which control the chemistry and physiology of the organism. So by repairing the electronic disruptions in the body, you are literally influencing the chemistry and physiology of the body. And here's an example of a Reiki master through, this is Carillion photography, and this is before he does a treatment, and this is after a treatment. And so what happens, this person has passed energy from themselves to another person. And so in a sense, this energy has flowed out of their, has flowed out of their body into the recipient, and they are left with energy depletion. And this is why some people whenever they do work, say a massage, for an example, will feel very tired afterward, because energy has flowed from their body into the recipient of the body, and they have to recharge themselves. And this is why people are doing things like grounding, earthing, as a way of recharging. Patching will help recharge the body. So another phenomenon I want to look at is what's called resonant energy transfer. we know that sick people have certain emission bands that are deficient. They have holes in their energy spectrum. They will be attracted to individual equipment and places that emit portions of the spectrum they're deficient in. So if you're doing therapy, let's say you're doing counseling therapy, you're working with somebody in a counseling session, and after they leave the room, you notice a profound sense of fatigue has come over you and that you feel drained and exhausted. The reason that's occurred is you have wirelessly transmitted or been drained of wirelessly portions of your electromagnetic and acoustical energy spectrum. And so what has occurred is at an unconscious level, energy has flown from you to that person. Now this can be a problem if you're in a relationship with a very unhealthy person and they drain you. You go, you're just draining me. I can't handle being around you. You're just a drain on my life. And literally at a biological, bioelectronic level, you're literally speaking the truth. You are literally being drained of your life force. And so these are called energy vampires or psychic leeches. And if you're working in the mental health field, you're going to come across these people quite frequently. You're going to experience this phenomenon regularly. And this is one reason why people in the mental health field get burned out after a while. Now, another aspect of this is a person who's uncomfortable to be around. A sick, unhappy, negative individual is difficult to be around because what happens is just being in the presence of a very negative, unhealthy person is physically exhausting. And the reason is you are wirelessly transmitting an energy field as you're living. And some people can hook into that field and there's a one-sided drain from one person to another. And so in the 60s, we used to call it person put off bad vibes. But what we're talking about is wireless energy transfer, resonant energy transfer. Dependency is a one-sided drain of one person to another. On the opposite, you have a person who's very gregarious and who is an extrovert, who is fun to be around, who has charisma. These people are like beacons of radio, or like a radio beacon transmitting high power, and people are naturally attracted to these people because they're putting out an energy field that makes them feel good. So a person with charisma was actually the opposite. They're actually a transmitter of putting out signals that people are attracted to. So there are reasons why these things are in the lexicon, why these things are in the literature. And as you understand it from a biological point of view, you can begin to make sense of the phenomenon. Now, if we look at LifeWave technology, we're using organic materials of a particular nature to create crystals. And these crystals will form in the patch. I'll show that in a few minutes. And they'll absorb and reflect specific infrared wavelengths. So basically, the patches are crystal radio sets. The human body is the power source for the transmission of energy from the patches. So the patches are passive. You place them on the body. The body puts out body heat, which is infrared energy, in a certain wave band, and the patches will absorb that energy. Now, it's recognized currently in the United States, which is 25 years behind the rest of the world, that specific wavelengths of infrared energy produce desirable effects such as pain relief. Researchers at the University of Wisconsin, Dr. Whelan, have demonstrated that specific wavelengths of light can produce physiological effects such as cellular proliferation, wound healing, energy production. So basically, using wavelengths of light in the infrared bandwidth can increase energy production, can facilitate wound healing. Well, this is no shock to anybody that's working with LifeWave patches. So we find that LifeWave patches are constructed from materials that reflect specific wavelengths of light. When placed on the human body, they reflect a portion of the body heat back to the user, but it's a very specific bandwidth. So there, we've learned by the construction materials that make up the patches, well, we can initiate specific metabolic effects. So, if, for example, we've developed a patch that reflects the wavelengths necessary to produce the production of glutathione. You say, well, is this possible? Well, we know that in the near ultraviolet bandwidth, as you're exposed to sunlight, you'll make vitamin D, active vitamin D. You'll also tan. You'll make melanin. So we know that wavelengths of light will activate biological processes in the body to produce vitamin D, to produce melanin. We also know that the eye is sensitive to wavelengths of light in the visual spectrum. So the eye is tuned as a receptor to wavelengths of light in the visual spectrum. Now, as we go into longer wavelengths, we get into the infrared bandwidth, starting about 780, 760 nanometers. And the infrared bandwidth has historically been considered waste body heat. But what I'm trying to point out to you is that's incorrect information. The new research is now showing that there are specific metabolic effects that occur with certain wavelengths in the infrared band. And LifeWave is the premier company now taking this understanding to a consumer product by generating signals that are very specific depending on which patch formula you're using. So patches are molecular antennas for transmitting biological messages needing for initiating metabolic changes. So if we look at the inside of a patch, you see there's polyester fabric. Take a white patch, look at it. You see there's a little piece of material in there. And this material has been soaked with a solution, and this solution has organic materials that have special properties. They're semiconducting. They are stereoisomers. So what happens is these materials will crystallize out on the fabric of polyester, and this is what's called a molecular antenna array. And so this structure acts as an antenna, and it absorbs in the infrared bandwidth. And what happens is you're able to generate specific wavelengths of infrared energy. So if we change the formula, this comes from our research paper studies, which we don't release. If we change the formula of the material in the patches, we will change the signal information. So each patch has a different set of signal wavelengths it's in. It's a radio station. So it's sending out information through crystal wireless transmission. So the patches are basically crystal radio sets. But they're not working in the radio band. They're working in the infrared bandwidth. So they're infrared crystal radio sets. Now, can this work? Yes. So LifeWave patches are similar to laser communication, in that wavelengths of light are modulated to contain necessary information. Here's a military laser communication system. Here's a laser communication system on this vehicle, which can then be transmitted to, say, this aerial platform, which can be signaled to another aerial platform. And so what we have is the ability to transmit information through light, and it's a well-recognized communication phenomenon. So we see that going back into the 40s, Albert St. George, the discoverer of vitamin C, first postulated that proteins act as semiconductors. Now, when he first postulated this, they thought he'd gone insane. But what we're looking at is that the proteins of the body are semiconductors, and that low-frequency electrical signals or high-frequency electrical signals can initiate cellular communications, similar to chemical communication. So the energy patches, for example, frequency modulate the bioelectrical field, bioelectromagnetic field of the body, and it basically acts as a carrier wave to send information from the patch into the body. And I've already given you the understanding that the cells themselves have receivers on them that are able to act as radios, like in your car, where they will receive a transmission and decode it or demodulate it at that level. So basically the patches use the communication functions of the body, the radio communications, or in this case, it's infrared radio signals. An example is we're using resonant phenomenon. If we take one tuning fork and we strike it, and we have another tuning fork nearby of the same, let's say it's middle C, this tuning fork which we strike will vibrate, and this tuning fork nearby that's not being struck will also vibrate and send out a signal because they're tuned to the same resonant frequency. And the same phenomenon occurs in all materials. And we create resonant frequencies with our patches, so our biological structures such as cell membranes and DNA will also resonate to them. And so what we're looking at is we construct antennas from molecules that transmit specific frequencies. So when our patches are activated, they send out a frequency with a message. This frequency is picked up by the molecules through resonant energy transfer, and we're using that body's bioelectrical field, biomagnetic field, as the carrier wave. So basically, it's radio communication technology. So we use the concept of signal induction. Signal induction is usually thought to be a biochemical process, but instead of chemicals influencing cell behavior, it's done passively with signal induction. It's no different than how wireless technologies work. If you went back to World War II and you pulled out a cell phone and said, here, this is a telephone, I can communicate from people all over the world with this telephone. And they're looking at you going, telephones are wired into the wall and communication system. You're crazy. You're absolutely insane. They'd put you in the nut house if you kept on and telling people that this was a wireless communication system. First off, they didn't have technology back then to create the electronics small enough to fit into a phone. So everybody knew right off the bat that that was a crazy idea. And secondly, they didn't have the infrastructure of wireless communication cell towers present and satellites in place. They didn't even think you could put a satellite in place back in World War II, except for a few far-thinking people. So what happens is any technology that's sufficiently advanced beyond most people's comprehension is either considered magic or it's considered nonsense. And so that's what you're facing when you're looking at people that are trying to explain the patches. So I would never try to explain the patches this way to anyone because they cannot comprehend all these things that I'm talking about. Most of the people will just discount it. If you tried to talk to a doctor or a pharmacologist, 99% of them would just basically tune you out because they don't have any foundation of understanding to be able to make anything what you're saying comprehensible. So what you simply want to say is patches are a way of stimulating acupuncture points and leave it at that. Anything else, you should basically say, hey, there's a DVD that you can look at by David Schmidt, the inventor, who explains the technology. So never try to explain the technology yourself. You're going to waste your time and energy. You might get a few people involved, but you're basically then going to get lost trying to explain. I get lost trying to explain this stuff, and I understand it. So what you want to do is not try to explain the technology, just as you're not trying to explain the circuit diagram of your cell phone. If you have a cell phone and you're trying to get somebody to buy a cell phone, you're not trying to tell them, well, there's a capacitor in here, and there's an inductor coil in here, and there's a frequency modulator in here that demodulates. They don't care. All they care about was, how does it work? Here's a power button, and how does it signal? Can I get video on it? All they want to know are the broad information. They don't want to know that detail. So I'm giving you this detail so you'd understand there's a scientific basis for how these patches work, but not because I want you to share this information with other people. I just want you to understand that this is a true technology. So LifeWave studies validate that patches engage and balance the electrical properties of the body. We know with the energy patch research that there's about a 22% average increase in fat burning. We know from looking at heart rate variability studies that we increase the activity of the component of the autonomic nervous system called the parasympathetic, or the relaxation component of the nervous system. So your body is less stressed, so it's a de-stressing technology. We know that from brainwave studies that the body goes into an alpha state, which is a relaxation state, more easily. We know from surface electrodes, it's called surface electromyography, that we result in redistribution of bioelectrical energy in the organs. So in a sense, we're facilitating the flow of energy through the bioelectric circuits of the body. If we look at biocoherence analysis, which is it's on there's a paper on the website on biocoherence, you can find there are standing waves of energy generated from cellular activity within the body. And basically, this is a way of looking at the endocrine or chakra system and seeing a rebalancing of energy in the chakras, as I say. And so you can see if you were to do this type of biocoherence analysis, that one person would have a very strong heart chakra, but they might be very weak in their throat chakra, for example, and they're unbalanced. This is an example of a test. We did over 2,000 tests over 3 years. So we pretty much saw that there was a redistribution of energy when the patches were worn. In this case, you can see that this person has low distribution of energy in their testes and thyroid. If you're looking at these glandular structures from an electronic point of view. And when the patches were placed on them, they normalized closer toward the midline. Here you have a lot of distance here, a lot of distance here, a lot of distance. So we redistributed this energy, so we were able to improve the flow of energy and the flow of communication in the body. Indirect calorimetry is a way of looking at oxygen utilization, carbon dioxide production, and our studies on stationary bikes demonstrated that energy patches improved energy production. And so this was a way of looking at what fuels the body used, and we found that the body would convert to fat burning when when a person was wearing patches. And this was a 60-person test, and this is on the website. 30-day study, energy production increased by 22.3%. In this case, 100% of the test subjects improved energy levels. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody felt better, because energy is like cash flow. In one person, energy might have been used to increase their muscular performance, so they had more athletic ability. In another person, it might have been used to repair. And in this case, the person would actually go into a down state, because when let's put it this way, if you're trying to repair the body, most repair goes on during the case of sleep. So your body goes into a passive, relaxed state. And so if a person is in need of massive repair, and you increase the energy in that person, what happens is now all of a sudden the body gets signaled to go into a relaxed state. So what happens, this person might actually get sleepy in the afternoon and have to lay down and take a nap. And what's occurring is, as this is taking place, is their body is now repairing proteins and reestablishing their hormones that are out of balance to some degree when they do this. Another person might go into a state of fatigue because they're dumping out massive amounts of toxins out of their tissues and having a detox reaction. So you're going to have a certain percentage of people, and it's about 30 to 35%, are actually going to feel less energy or worse wearing the energy patches because they're not increasing energy like a stimulant, like a caffeine or a pep pill. They're increasing energy, and it's being utilized through different mechanisms and processes. Now, what we also learned, that people that eat high sugar diets had less efficiency in utilizing the energy patches, and this is because fat burning takes place when insulin production declines, or insulin stimulation declines. And if you're eating a lot of sugar, your insulin levels rise, and your body signals itself to store fat, not burn fat. So what occurs is a person who's on a high carbohydrate diet might experience less energy production from the patches, say energy patches, than another person, because they've got too much insulin going on. Their body is getting a signal to burn sugar instead of fat, so you're getting a signal interference. We've also talked about this person might not get the energy from the point of view that they're magnesium and zinc and calcium deficient. We also pointed out that the person might not get energy from the patches because they're B-complex deficient. So, or they're dehydrated. So I'm trying to help you get some understanding of some of the different problems we've learned from our research that interfere with getting an optimal response from the patches. Now, we know ice wave leads to pain relief. And we just did a 38-horse study. And this is an example of one of the pictures from that study. This was a horse taken before patching, and we see a lot of inflammation in, I guess this is his right side. This would be the left side of the horse. And here's a cold area. And 10 minutes after patching, we see that this inflamed area has begun to cool off, and this cool area has been to warm up. It's more prominent on the left side. 10 minutes after patching, we see a significant reduction in inflammation. Now, what's important is that we saw about a 5 degree centigrade change, 4 to 5 degrees centigrade, I think it might be 5 degrees centigrade change in temperature in a few minutes when energy patches were placed on the body. And so this is a significant physiological shift, and it occurred in all 38 of the horses in this last study. This is an example of a human with infrared testing done by Dr. Dean Clark, and again we see that the patches, this is probably ice waves, are able to reduce inflammation significantly within a few minutes. This is gas discharge visualization, so those of you who wanted to know how to spell that, there it is. It allows you real-time viewing of energy fields. Here are two of the patches, brown and white, placed under a GDV device, or a Carillion photography device, and we see they're putting out an energy signature. Quite fascinating. Here's an example of a human before and after. This is 10 minutes after patching. And remember that biofield I was explaining earlier, of the electromagnetic field that extends out of the body? It's the way of looking at it. And we see before patching, this person had frequency holes. Let me go back. They had frequency holes here. You can find some more. And after patching, the field is stronger, and these holes have begun to fill in. Here, this is almost completely filled in right in here now. And this is starting to fill in here. So what we've done is we see the global energy field of the body has strengthened. And since this global field of the body is controlling the physiology and chemistry of the body, anything that improves the bioelectrical magnetic field of the body is going to lead you toward a state of better health. So whether or not you are experiencing massive changes in energy and other things that you were trying to get with the patches, recognize that increasing the bioelectrical magnetic field of your body is a good thing, that it is promoting health, that it's an anti-aging property of all of our patches. And here's an example of the glutathione patches. Both increasing energy and rearranging of energy was a consistent finding in all GDV studies with lightweight patches. And this is research done in India. We've now done over 400 people at the study site in India. And in their conclusion back in 2009, it seems crystal clear that isolated glutathione patches have profound effects in pain management. During experiments, changes witnessed in the biofield are strongly positive in the after scans. This was a consistent finding with almost every single person that was treated. There were a few people that did not have strengthening fields, and there were probably several explanations for that, from dehydration to mineral deficiency to vitamin deficiency or whatever. The point I'm trying to make is you're truly on the forefront of a significant advance in electronic medicine when you're using the patches. You have the ability to strongly influence the health of people around you in many unforeseen ways. This is an example of the sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system, and in this case the parasympathetic system has certain functions. It reduces heart rate, it stimulates digestive activity. Now, in excessive stimulation, you can actually get some bronchial constriction. Thank God we don't see that, and nobody's ever reported having an asthma attack with the patches so far. So there's a rebalancing effect. But the point is, we have seen people go into a relaxed state. So we see an enhanced parasympathetic response improves the body's ability to recuperate and return to a balanced state after pain or stress. A balanced state means lower heart rate, more relaxed blood vessels, reduced tension. And this is why you see some people's blood pressure go down. We don't make that claim, I'm just making the observation. We see with equipment that the patches will increase tissue conductivity. We take probes and put electrical electrical patches, I'm trying to think of the right word, I just blanked out here. Anyway, these are, somebody help me, go ahead.
Plates. You put plates. Don't you put plates, electrical plates?
Yeah, electrical plates will work, okay. The point is we're putting these signal detectors on the body. In other words, sometimes your brain's not going fast enough here. And
they're actually patches too, Dr. Steve, with gel on them.
Yeah, they're electrically conductive patches connected to electrical signals. Cords, yes. I was trying to use another word besides patches. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, by putting these on the body, we're actually able to measure the tissue conductivity between them. And when we apply patches, we see the conductivity increase.
I just thought of the word, Dr. Steve. It's probes, I think. Probes.
Yeah. Yeah, you can use these probes also. There you go. There you go.
I have that machine.
So, okay.
Okay.
Now, glutathione, I'm not going to really go over this because I think most people here know some of the benefits of glutathione, such as improving antioxidant systems of the body, immune systems, heavy metal excretion, When we did our sleep studies, the first set of sleep studies with the sleep patches, we found that the body went into delta wave production, significant average increase of 50%. This is the slow wave component that occurs during deep sleep, and it's during deep sleep that you get the best repair. Now that's all I have today. We can, I guess, take a few questions or whatever. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Dr. Steve. Are there any questions? If you'd like to ask it verbally, you can raise your hand. We have about 4 minutes, and we have to end right on time because of the recording. Anybody?
I'll answer a couple I see here.
Fran, maybe?
I would use armor thyroid instead of synthroid as one way of approaching a hypothyroid state under the care of a qualified physician. I wouldn't advise anybody to start using this without having a qualified naturopath or medical doctor.
I think, Dr. Steve, to save you the trouble, I think a lot of those have already been answered.
Okay.
But let's go to some of the hands that are raised. Maybe there's a verbal.
Okay. All right.
Let me try Fran here. I'm going to unmute you, Fran, and you can talk now. There we go. Okay, go ahead and ask your question. Fran, can you ask? No? Okay. Oh, wait, maybe that wasn't Fran. All of a sudden. Here, now, Fran. There we go. Fran, can you ask your question?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, let's see. Here's another hand real quickly. Isabella? Let's see if... when I unmute them, it goes back.
How about there?
Yeah.
Isabella?
Thank you. Can you ask your question? You had your hand up?
I guess not.
How about Nadia? Nadia, I'll unmute you. You're unmuted.
Oh, no.
No?
How about Gunnar? How about Gunnar?
Okay. Gunnar, how about you? Some of you we know have English as a second language, but Gunnar is very proficient in English.
Gunnar, you have a question?
Okay,
You're unmuted.
And some of your hands are up and you don't realize it, I guess.
All right.
So one of the questions we're getting in the last few minutes is whether or not they can have this PowerPoint presentation, and no, the answer is no. This is Dr. Steve's proprietary many years of putting together this wonderful information, so no. But you can go up to lifewavetraining.com. You're going to get a link that Lily will be sending you, and Jeanette probably. Are you going to send it out right away, Lily?
It'll go out within 24 hours. We need to get the recording downloaded and uploaded and go through that whole process. So you'll get a link, and that'll take you directly to a page where you can go ahead and download the presentation to your computer or click view right from that page, and you'll be able to view this and get all the information absorbed.
And this is private, just for you guys. No one else can get there except people who have taken the manual training.
Yeah, so please don't share that link as well.
Right. Okay, everybody's saying wonderful, very good. We have 1 minute. I'd like to see the 8-hour version. Oh my gosh, so you're not brain dead? Oh, okay, well, the electrophysiologist might could take the manual training again if they would like to get involved with this technology, so that's a possibility.
Okay, everyone, next week, just to let you know, next week we're going to be going to the Patch Basics session, and Kathy Arnaud, one of our great presenters here, will be leading that session, and that'll give you some basic background about the LifeWave patches and how to get started with using the patches. So that'll be up for you next week. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Lily?
Fine. Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Steve. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
As
As al-
always.
As
As usual. Yeah.
Goodbye, old buddy.